Welcome back, everybody. It was the scientist under Blob. We got a link in the description for you. The Niigata prefecture, they were supposed to fire one of those reactors up tomorrow. And it's in January the 1st, 2024, there was a catastrophic earthquake over at the Noto Peninsula. You see the epicenter over there. Well, you can see the North American plate, Eurasian plate. That dotted line is the plate that ruptured. That's in proximity to the Niigata Kashiwazaki nuclear power plant, which is the biggest in the world. It's been shut down since Fukushima. And so this is again part 3 of the press conference. I decided we gotta get that out of the way because I have a part 3 of a previous press conference I still haven't got to. I already queued up for one of these nights, so I got to get that done. I don't want the same thing to happen here. Because when I start doing shows in between it, because I'm bringing so much information in, I might not see it, right? Because it gets buried in my session. This the guy on the corner, he's not a nuclear expert, but if you've been watching these recent presentations, you know, he's allegedly the nuclear expert for the Japanese government, but he was actually, in his own words.
My name is Nishiyama. I'm a Director General for International Trade Policy, but
he's the International Trade and Policy Deputy Director General. He's not now, as of that date, which was 17th, I believe.
This time, I'm in charge of nuclear and industrial safety and
nuclear industry and safety. This time,
safety agency. Yeah.
Safety agency, but he's not a nuclear expert because they're not going to use a nuclear expert because you'll make a Freudian slip, right? So they bring in so-called government, one of the Japanese employees that considers themselves better than everybody the minute they get the job. And then the betrayal immediately fires up, right? This is another night of madness. Like, you know, right away you had these reactors detonating. Every nuclear scientist on the planet sold you out. I shouldn't say that, there was some dissenting voices. They weren't prominent and they weren't loud enough for some reason. TEPCO released new data to the white smoke from reactor 3. This is not white smoke. This is the emissions from a nuclear meltdown. This is not smoke. If you took a cup of that and you open that glass bottle of it and you open the bottle up in front of somebody, they drop dead. That doesn't qualify as smoke, right? TEPCO has sent out their messengers to gather as many workers as possible. Officials in Fukushima reportedly told businesses, bring us the living dead, people no one will miss. And then when you see this picture, right, that couldn't be more true.
And if you could keep your answer short and non-technical, I'd be extremely grateful.
Mm-hmm.
Really, you're a journalist. You don't want no technical supporting documentation. Is just terrifying. A renewed nuclear chain reaction feared at the spent fuel storage pool. They're talking about reactor 4, which is the one to your left. The fuel pools were at the top of the building. All you see to your left is a stump. So there was 100%. A renewed chain reaction meant it melted down again. This was March the 20th. This is 2 days after this particular press conference.
First of all, the reactor has been totally shut down as a result of the earthquake.
だから崩壊熱というのは
Sorry, I had to fix my headphones there. The reactor went into after the earthquake, the reactor went into a shutdown mode, but it takes days and days and days to reach so-called, they call it a cold shutdown, but there's no such thing as a cold shutdown. But it's a cold shutdown compared to the enormous temperatures and pressures where it's producing power, right? But now it's splitting atoms for millions of years to fuel. So when you take it out and put it in the fuel pool, it's evil because it's splitting atoms into your environment, and there's nobody with immune system that can defend against it or species.
And unless we cool it by using seawater, decay.
Now, that's an interesting statement. And I meant to, let me go find it. When you spray salt water on these nuclear meltdowns, because these are nuclear meltdowns, you're not going to cool these things. This was done to, there's a word for it, to lull people into complacency, basically, thinking that they have it under control. There's another word, and if I don't do, this is the sulfur, but it's from spraying salt water on the reactors. Like, they were in a rock and a hard place for sure, but they done it in order to trick you into thinking they had it under control. And most of the material was ejected right out of the buildings clearly, but the sulfur is when it's created by salt water. The sulfur, in this case, is a product of the heat. So you're putting salt water in these enormous temperatures, and they knew about this in the late 40s, 50s, and forever after, that the enormous temperatures from, say, bombs and that would release the sulfur, and it would create these spherical balls. It's kind of actually super important because they've done this for a long time, for many, many weeks. And then the sulfur, oh, there it is. It's an unprecedented phenomenon from spraying salt water. Let me explain this. This is what the sulfur creates, these spherical balls. And that structure is super important. It ingests uranium, plutonium, the curium isotopes, cesium and everything else. Curium isotopes are your biggest byproducts. They're incredibly lethal to everything. These are super hot particles. They're very mobile. They're not solutable in water. And they're liberated back into the environment. They like to hang out close to the surface where all the animals and kids are in the communities, for instance. And another property of it is they're very powerful. And so they're floating close to the surface, right? And they're emitting these betas and alphas and neutron gamma shines and rays and everything else. And this sterilizes all the species in a very large area per microscopic. And these are very tiny stuff, but they're very powerful. Forming uranium compounds able to travel long distances, they don't need the jet streams to be a huge issue. Japan test finds radiation in infant food, and because Japan does not require radiation testing for most food, ratings have been reported voluntarily by producers and consumers who don't have the technical knowledge, don't have the technical equipment, who don't have a foundation, and that the equipment they're using is only going to find a fraction of, just say, gamma. It's not going to find the other different types of isotopes, alphas, betas, and neutrons. Flights from Tokyo triggers radiation alarms in Chicago and Dallas. Fuel rods in reactor 4, 5, and 6 are exposed. Now think about that statement. Fuel rods in reactor 4, 5, and 6. So that's kind of an important story that should be now exposed. And 4 reactor units have core damage. If the fuel rods are exposed, they catch fire. And when they catch fire, they don't need oxygen to ignite everything else. So once some of them catches fire, they ignite the rest of them. The temperatures and the heat and everything else will enhance each other synergistically. That should be up in my folder for 5 and 6. I apologize. I'll come right back to that. Let me show you the madness. This whole story is so mad. Well, that's reactor 5 and that's reactor 6, but these pictures, which were not released for the first 10 years, were released. I got these from TEPCO's website, and the question is, why did they release these? This was a high-quality drone, clearly, and these pictures are extractions because the original pictures are very high because even helicopters couldn't survive in proximity, right? And so when I started zooming in these 736 mystery pictures, I was in just absolute shock that not only reactor 6 was pixelated out, but over there, up here is the reactor 4 pixelated out, but over there is the common spent fuel pool, and which is right across from reactor 4. That was pixelated out. That's incredibly important, by the way. And so this story here, flights from Tokyo trigger radiation alarms. As you went down, you've seen they were doing, a time reference of the Fukushima plant. Fuel rods in reactor 4, 5, and 6 were exposed. Now, we don't have any footage of reactor 4 blown up. We have footage of reactor 3 and reactor 1 blowing up, right? That's reactor 1 up there. Reactor 3 is up there. Reactor 2 and reactor 4 is in the corner. But all of these, well, that wasn't where the footage originally came from, but all of them were from the same camera. So then the question is, why didn't we have pictures of reactor 4 blowing up? Sorry. Just let me go back to the buckyballs again. madness, right? And seawater can cause a chain reaction, a criticality event. Which is, then the question is, they used it to manipulate people into thinking that, and now the seawater they were spraying was another nightmare, because that was atomized and aerosoled, ionized and radiated, bombarded with neutrons and betas and gammas and alphas, and then released into the environment as radioactive seawater particulates. And that's not supposed to exist. That's not stuff that normally would be irradiated by fuel, but was in copious amounts every single day, because you had a tsunami take out the infrastructure. The Prime Minister ordered a halt to the cooling after he was advised the seawater could cause a chain reaction and criticalities. Right? And we don't know if it's true or not. That came out later. And it was equivalent to, say, 100 Nagasaki bombs going off, radioactive fallout, extra emissions from the nuclear site. Could be thousands, right? I'm just saying you have to put that into that equation. And there was a bunch of different media reports on it. You can look hopefully up some of them. Now there is a sulfur created, right? But that's not what the real issue was. The real issue was they were spraying salt water, and that phenomenon from nuclear testing in the ocean, because Japan don't require testing. I mean, the food was banned by 55 countries. Japan was the last one to acknowledge they had a nuclear meltdown.
And accordingly, since we currently face a situation...
So when you see him and you hear her, she's translating from Japanese to English. And there's also, you'll hear like the journalists, the absolute serial killers,
where we are not able to cool it down by using seawater, but rather what we are now doing is to spray or supply a certain amount of seawater directly to the reactor core itself, whereas we have no way of releasing the heat that exists in there. It is taking quite some time.
This is on the 18. All the reactors have detonated and lost their entire inventories at this point.
Until we can expect to have it naturally or spontaneously cooled down.
Naturally or spontaneously? Well, it can't naturally or spontaneously cool down when you ejected all the reactor cores at the top of the buildings and the reactor core that was running right out of the buildings. It's incredible inventories. And the interesting thing about those press conferences is you notice they don't provide you any pictures, any diagrams, right? This was the cover story. But it was a betrayal to the Japanese society, the country, and humanity in order to protect an industry that has no right to exist in the first place, because it's responsible for the majority of illnesses and diseases worldwide from 80 years of emissions.
Questions from foreign press. Okay,
My name is Maria Yamaguchi of the Associated Press. Have you made any estimate of if there was any damage from the earthquake itself onto the the facilities, and particularly.
Was there any damage to the facilities from the earthquake, right? Yeah, number one core started melting down before the tsunami got there. So the earthquake, and the rest of them, if the tsunami didn't show up, they would have melted down because the earth had shifted so much, it destroyed the water intakes, as a lot of you know. You need 1 million gallons a minute for each reactor. You need 4,500 tons of water a minute. That's 70 tons a second. That's 71-ton pickup trucks of water each second.
Particularly at Unit 3, spent fuel storage pond.
Well, look, this is a journalist on the 18th asking about the integrity of the spent fuel storage pond when these videos and pictures were released right away of the building completely detonating and ejecting all of that out. And you don't need to be a journalist to extrapolate that from the documentation that was available on the same day.
Because of the rapid decline of water levels, considering the rapid decrease of the water levels in the pool.
Right, so that the whole story is such a heartbreaking betrayal to humanity, right? That's reactor 3. So that skanky journalist, she's seen that, it's ejected non-reactor cores, and they're massive. They're pure uranium, pure plutonium. Radiation forecast withheld by the government, the traitors' government. Releasing it would cause unnecessary panic. And there's a whole bunch of these headlines, by the way, over quite a bit of time. The ministry decided such data would be unavailable due to loss of power. They would lose power. So because they felt they wouldn't have a job, they decided to leave everybody in a nuclear wasteland to protect their jobs. There's not a single redeeming quality to the entire nuclear industry after all of these years and years and years. I've never come across a single redeeming quality for this industry. If a 1-hour Fukushima press conference, which is what we're doing 3 shows to challenge their lies, not challenge their lies, but provide you with the documentation to show you that they lied. It's not up. The information I'm providing is not up for debate. It's unassailable documentation. And it's taken us 6 hours to counter documentation of their lies. So if a 1-hour Fukushima press conference averages 6 hours, which is what it's taken us each time, of counter documentation, is nuclear power unsupportable? Well, yeah, of course it is unsupportable. It's unsupportable because clearly these people we don't have a single person in the entire nuclear industry that anybody on the planet will trust or could trust or should trust. And these people that lied, that should be a crime, but it's not a crime to lie about this for some reason. It's not a crime to poison you with anthropogenic man-made radiation, but Congress and Parliament don't have the authority to make it a crime, but they have the authority to make it a crime to poison you with 3,000 plus chemicals that they currently make it illegal. But they don't have the authority, only the nuclear industry has that authority. So how is that even conceivably able to happen?
And another question is that after experiencing the quake and the tsunami of that magnitude, and that had not been anticipated when most of the nuclear power plants are built in Japan, do you think there's a need to evaluate the safety standards?
So do you think there's a need to evaluate the safety standards? ultimate insider, right, very close to the Prime Minister Khan, who died last week, right, contemplated evacuating 30 million people from Tokyo. He didn't because of mass panic and chaos. So then, therefore, that'll be the same excuse used every single time. Well, we wanted to evacuate it, but we didn't want mass panic because the nuclear industry can't survive the truth. If you have to fight back, this industry is going to wipe out every species, as anybody paying attention is well aware. Japan, and think about the statement that came out. Japan halts the review of the national nuclear policy after the draft report scandal. The people that were reviewing it were supposed to be independent, right? They weren't. The Japanese Atomic Energy Commission decided to suspend a review of the country's nuclear policy guidelines being conducted by the so-called expert panels after all of the panelists expressed concern, some of them over selection of some of the panel, which included members from the nuclear power company itself and research institutes that are promoting nuclear power. There's not a single facet of the nuclear industry that is not a 1,000,000% compromised. The Commission decided to temporarily halt this review of the guidelines and exclude some of the panel. From the panel, any person from the nuclear industry and research institutes promoting nuclear power after there was blowback. And if the nuclear fuel cycle policy is abandoned, 3,000 tons of used nuclear fuel, which is 6 million pounds, are already transported to the Rokusho, which is still not operational, by the way, 29 years later, a reprocessing site, must be returned to each nuclear station as agreed with the Amari prefectural government. It's so it's so bizarre to be so corrupt.
In response to your first question,
it's the most corrupt industry we've ever seen. There's nothing comes close to it. Because its emissions spread worldwide and they poison all 8 million species, and we're just one of them.
In response to your first question, to the extent that we are aware, most part of the damage that was experienced by Fukushima number 1 nuclear power generation plant was caused by the tsunami that was of a unprecedented level.
First off, you got a 3,000-year legacy of tsunamis there. They're up to 300 feet high. You have a 3,000-year history, legacy of earthquakes, and you're less than 70 kilometers from the tectonic plates. So you built it in the least. It'd be like building your house on a volcano that is active. And you're saying, well, no, it'll be okay for the 100 years that we might be living there. Because you refuse to you refuse to look at the mountain and see that the volcano was active. How is it possible that you would build nuclear power plants and then they know the prevailing winds are straight to North America and ultimately covering the entire planet? They also know, like Fukushima tapes, this is the suicide corpse. Suicide corpse, they call themselves suicidal kamikaze corpse. We can't vent Unit 2. This is the end. And that recording ends soon after. It was released.
And at the current stage, including the spent fuel storage pool of unit number 3, we have not observed anything substantial in terms of the earthquake itself.
So you never. This was on the 18th. Okay, this happened on the 14th. So to look in hindsight and say, make a statement, an assertion like they just done is, it's not illegal. If it was, all of these people would be in jail for the rest of their lives, and most of them would get the death penalty because Japan has the death penalty, and it should be applied to every one of these people. Like, none of that panel had any illusions that the entire inventory was gone. They, for the nuclear industry, and the Japanese government, with the help of corrupt and criminal elements of the Japanese government, decided to, and the International Atomic Energy Agency, the people in the International Atomic Energy Agency should be prosecuted in Japan for crimes against humanity and given the death penalty. The people that participated from the International Atomic Energy Agency after this are just evil, sadistic, twisted, monstrous criminals that we have no comparison in history to. Right? Mao and Pol Pot, Genghis Khan, it has not done the damage that these people have done. All of these need to be prosecuted. That's the only way forward. Everybody in the nuclear industry, as far as I can tell, should be prosecuted. There is no other way forward. They have to be held to account. They have to be prosecuted for crimes against the future of humanity has been compromised because of these morons, these dummies. These are dummies, right? They get incredible education, but they're barely functional humans, right? They stayed in university because they didn't know how to go out and look for a job, and the industry picked them up and then weaponized them against us.
Or the sway from the earthquake itself?
Well, we know the earthquake separated the water intakes, right? It shifted the country 6 or 8 feet to the west, was it? I can't remember. But we know that separated the water intakes. So the reactors would have melted down within an hour or two, even if the tsunami never showed it up. There's reactor 3. And so they're pretending that never happened on that day, where it looked exactly like that. And that was, when you look at the design, where the inventories are at the top of the buildings, we're talking about 9 reactor cores at the top of each of the buildings. You're talking about 36 reactor cores are released into your environment from 8 fuel pools at 4 buildings. How is that not important?
And in response to your second question, the Japanese nuclear power generation plants are equipped with a high level of earthquake-proof system that we excel in, and probably the best in the world. However, this time we have faced a earthquake, and in particular a tsunami that of a size that we have never experienced or anticipated, which has led to the damage that has been caused.
Right? They absolutely, unequivocally, positively knew that it was on a tectonic plates. They knew there's 1,000 earthquakes a year just on those tectonic plates. They have a 3,000-year legacy of tsunamis and earthquakes that are catastrophic right where they built the plants. He should be scalped and then hung a few minutes later for what he done.
And since we are now faced with a very huge incident that we have never experienced up to.
Well, yes, you have. You have a 3,000-year history of earthquakes and tsunamis right there.
I'm Andrew Morse from the Wall Street Journal and Dow Jones Newswires. I'd like to ask...
From the Wall Street Journal and the Dow Jones Newswire, which means you're completely untrustable.
Was an Article 15 notice ever issued for the loss of suppression at the number 3 unit. And Article 15s were issued for 1, 2, and 4, but there doesn't seem to be one for number 3. Why is that?
Because number 3 detonated. It ejected its 9 reactor cores right out of the building. I mean, right out of the building. And
nobody seems to know the reason why, so we will check on that and come back to you.
Hi, this is Kosaku Noriyuki, and I am with Dow Jones Newswires.
So he's with Dow Jones Newswire too. I gotta go to their site and check them out.
How many countries and international agencies have sent nuclear experts to Japan? And how many has arrived?
How many countries have sent nuclear experts to Japan? What are they going to do? What is a nuclear expert going to do at a nuclear meltdown? Anybody want to enlighten me? Want to shock me? Want to amaze me? You can call in 709-740-4076. 709 in Canada, 740-4076. I'd love to hear from the nuclear industry to challenge my assertions. Seems I got 2 thumbs down on my poll. Let's hear it. I don't hide away from you like you hide away from everybody else.
And how many of them went into the site already?
None. Do you think for 1 second that a nuclear scientist is going to go there and do what? He's going to stand there and get a lethal dose spraying regions? You really think a nuclear scientist... If you see a paper suit at Fukushima, and you do, it ain't anybody that knows something about nuclear. Nuclear people that know anything about nuclear will not answer the phone. Let's put it that way.
First of all, we...
That's an interesting statement, too, because if you read declassified emails from the Nuclear Regulatory Commission's website, United States Nuclear Regulatory Commission website, there's over 4 million emails. A lot of it's redacted. And it's very boring stuff, but there are tons and tons and tons and tons of tidbits. And a lot of it is people that they were trying to contact to go to Japan wouldn't answer the phone. They weren't able to get hold of them. That was not an accident.
Have received many offers for support, assistance, and cooperation.
For public relation. You can't go to a nuclear meltdown and do something.
For instance...
And a nuclear scientist, nuclear academic, nuclear expert is zilch possibility they're going to go to the prefecture, let alone to the plant.
The IAEA, among the international...
Yeah, these people need to be held accountable desperately.
Agencies, also from the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, NRC of the United States, and many other countries.
And do what? Like, the minute you seen reactor 1 exploding, it meant, if you're a nuclear expert, it meant you can't get back on the site without an instant death.
And in response to your question of how many nuclear experts are here in Japan, I don't know the overall picture, so I would not be able to tell you exactly, but I would...
Does Japan need any nuclear experts? Don't they have lots? They had over 50 nuclear reactors. They have universities, nuclear schools, nuclear institutions, nuclear companies. Do they really need experts from outside? Right? No.
Presume in total it would be in the order of 20 or so people.
Experts from different countries offered. What help? What kind of help? Japan can't control their own TEPCO's in charge. They're not even a decommission authority. They've done everything they can to make sure everybody on the entire planet, every species, had their life destroyed, their health destroyed by radioactive fallout. They've done everything they could to make sure that happened. They continue to grow food in the nuclear wasteland even today. They never stopped growing it. They gave the incompetent farmers who believed the lies garbage Geiger counters and told them to check it. And as you've seen earlier, they don't even check the food. It was volunteers who were passing in numbers, and these people didn't know what they were doing. You have every right to hate, to absolutely despise everybody in the nuclear industry. I have nothing but contempt for everybody in the nuclear industry. You have no right not to reject them and condemn them for the end of eternity. In fact, you have a moral obligation to hold them accountable, because we're the last generations will ever have that opportunity.
And I would assume that there are not yet any such nuclear experts that are on the site in Fukushima. Not
He's
yet.
assuming there's no nuclear experts on this site. Look at it. If you show that picture, if you had that happen today, and you had access to nuclear scientists, and you walked up to them with $100,000 cash and plane tickets and said, I need you to get on the plane, get down there and supervise the people. Like, they would jump out the window right in front of you to get away from you. And if you took their picture, if you had them on a camera, they would grab the camera and run away. The one thing we know about every nuclear scientist is they're a coward. That's the one thing that they all seem to have in common. And they're the worst types of cowards. They'll sacrifice you for their career on the drop of a hat, and that's the only reason you'll get the job.
And also, going back to the question for the previous questioner, the Article 15 notice has been lodged for Unit 3 also on the 14th of March.
Article 3 was lodged on the 14th of March for Unit 3, was it? Well, that's Unit 3. This was a total loss of all the inventories, 30-plus years inventories of reactor cores were lost in each of the buildings. And we're not fighting back? We're not upset? This is still important every day of your life, for your entire life, and for your children, their grandchildren, their great-grandchildren, if there actually is that generational. It looks like they ultimately are going to sterilize every species on this planet.
And also, going back to the question for the previous questioner, the Article 15 notice has been lodged for Unit 3 also on the 14th of March. Yes, that's right.
Let me just add. Let me just add that I guess Mr. Amano brought with him. Mr. Amano brought with him some nuclear experts.
Now he's the one of the government's high-level public relation experts. Clearly, he must know a lot about nuclear. He wouldn't be sitting there, right? But he should be in jail minimum for the rest of his life.
And according to the announcement made by IAEA, I guess this is experts of
and the
four
IAEA.
persons
They need to be prosecuted.
Mainly experts of measurement of radioactivity.
The IAEA is your enemy. They're not your friends. There's nobody's friends, not even themselves, not even particularly anybody else on the planet. It's unconscionable that there's not an ounce of accountability for these people have destroyed our universe. They've destroyed humanity. And the International Atomic Energy Agency, go read any of their articles, and you'll typically see this type of disclaimer. The International Atomic Energy Agency is not a regulator and is not in a position to judge or approve anything for anybody on the entire planet by proxy. Their job is to coordinate the cover stories, coordinate the poisoning of the species. These are all absurdly emaciated whales that are coming up in my next die-off presentation. And these, I know it's crazy, but that's an actual blue whale. That's supposed to weigh 380,000 pounds. At best, it weighs 30,000 pounds. Like, when I talk about a peanut head, I never dream it could be that deformed, which is, right, a high-level marker of emaciation, starvation. We broke the food chain. All of these emaciated whales, that was a week ago, that Bride's whale. That's absurd. It's absurd emaciation. That's absurdness. And this was about 3 months ago, a Bride's whale also. You know, in 2016, there was an extra, on top of an unusual mortality event for humpback whales, which is true for every species. We're seeing this in every species. But they actually acknowledged there was 7,000 extra humpback whales that they assumed starved to death. They assumed they starved to death because we broke the food chain. They acknowledged it in 2016, and there's your headline to prove it. And that was broken by perpetual radioactive fallout that covered your entire planet. Plutonium was released for months. It never stops going out. But the biggest byproduct is not plutonium, it's curium. Curium needs lead shielding 20 times thicker. And plutonium is brutal. You can count at least 3 tumors from that exposure, from that ingestion, consumption. And then in 2012, I said this reactor 3 and 4. Reactor 4 is behind me. You're looking at 18 reactor cores are gone. That's not up for any kind of debate. So my light is giving me a hard time. I'm just going to try to fix that because I'm seeing flickering on my side. Just give me a minute. That was a bit sketchy. That's why you shouldn't climb on chairs. Hopefully that works better. I might have to change. Yeah, that's steady. Because that light has 2 dials. Just let me go in and adjust. The contrast. Well, the contrast is already quite low. Let me brighten it up. Oh, that's actually kind of better with no contrast, isn't it? Turn the brightness down a little bit. Hopefully that works out. It's the whole story is just, my goodness, eh? So he very rarely speaks at these press conferences, but he's the...
Thank you, Khaldun Azhari, Panoramic News. I have a small question for Mr. Kato. Did you notice any...
I couldn't catch that today when I was chopping through the video.
Thank you, Khaldun Azhari, Panoramic News. I have a small question for Mr. Kato. Did you notice any
Let me do it one more
effect...
time. I'll shut up here. I'm going to turn it up. It's going to be loud. Hang on.
Thank you. Khaldun Asari, Panoramic News. I have a small question for Mr. Kato.
Yeah, I don't know
Did
what
you
it is.
notice any effect on the life or wildlife or plants in the area of the 30 kilometers zone? I mean, the wildlife or the products that cows or something that produce milk or products for the people to eat. Are you also studying the effect on this category so you
These
can
are
protect the
seeded
health
questions,
more in
eh?
the future?
I'll
Thank
turn
you.
it back down there now. Think of a plume. This is the plume the French government at 1 million to 10 million atoms per cubic meter of air. It's based on 31 days when it stops. I'm going to tell you when it's at 20 days. Or it's based on 16 days, this particular model. At 16 days, according to the French government, of 1 million to 10 million atoms of cesium-137 only per cubic meter of air, covering almost the entire planet in the first 16 days. Give it another 5 days, the entire planet is permanently blanketed. And cesium-137, of course, think of it as a snowstorm where you cover your whole planet in snow. The snow never melts, it never stops coming out. Then you get it, right? Well, you have to think of radiation because you can't see it or smell it or hear it or feel it or taste it or touch it or perceive it or anything else. And we still only got 13 viewers on my show. That's it. That's what I got on my show. It's 13 viewers, 13 likes, 14 votes, 2 down in desperation. Because anytime we do a poll where we suggest that the nuclear industry is completely corrupt, I'll get those particular attributes. It's just an evil industry. Everybody
in response to that question, what we are now doing
evil in this
is
industry.
monitoring the level of radio activity within the atmosphere, within the atmosphere in the region that is within a radius of 20 kilometers from the site.
Yeah, and here's what it looked like. So let me stop this. Let me go, because they're on day 7, right? They're on the 18th, 17th. This is the 18th. This is what it looked like. The plume on the 18th. And this was based upon a spike in radiation detecting equipments of 1 million to 10 million atoms. It's only based on a single isotope. Three sieverts is a lethal dose. I'm not sure how you would describe 100,000 sieverts, but say 20 sieverts, that'll melt your organs in that environment in just a few moments. And so what does 100,000 mean, right? And then the people that were tricked and deceived and manipulated and coerced and bullied and threatened to go in there were the most vulnerable of society, who didn't know what they were doing, who had no help. They were done just so they could get pictures claiming that the experts were there working. The whole cover-up is a genocide machine, omnicide machine that has no right to exist. These people, we should burn the entire nuclear industry to the ground if it wouldn't poison the entire planet for 1 billion years again. There's not a single industry or facet of the nuclear industry that has the right to exist. Right? If you had any honesty in the industry wouldn't have never existed in the first place. It exists because of 100% corruption, 100% deception, 100% deceit and dishonesty.
And as I mentioned in the third point I mentioned in my initial remarks, we are having an analysis done every day for tap water and fallout throughout Japan. And in Japan...
And these analysts, they weren't doing analysts, they were cooking numbers and saying it was safe. Every one of them should be beheaded publicly. And the video should be shared vigorously on all social media platforms as a deterrent for the industry. The industry doesn't have a deterrent not to be evil. The government standards for radioactive cesium came into effect, by the way, in April 2012. So in other words, they weren't testing. As I showed you earlier, they weren't testing. By the way, 50 becquerels per kilogram is permanent lesions to your vital organs of all adults and animals. And 50 becquerels per kilogram for children is permanent heart damage, like holes in their heart, congenital malformations.
Already from the beginning of the 1960s, we have been analyzing the tap water and fallout throughout Japan, and we have also been...
Iodine. It's just so infuriating that they poison everybody and compromised and catastrophically compromised the health of all 8 million species that is ultimately going to end as an extinction event on this planet. Saying evil is, and I should speak out more harshly, but because we're on YouTube, you can't do it.
Measuring and monitoring the gamma ray dose rate.
What about alphas? What about neutrons? What about betas? What about X-rays? As if they don't exist? It infuriates me. I apologize. It infuriates me. In fact, the cowards, the nuclear industry cowards, said 60 and older should be prepared to die. And they weren't talking about nuclear experts. They weren't talking about nuclear power plant employees. How come the 54 nuclear reactor employees didn't go to Fukushima? How come the homeless and the destitute, the victims of society and the immigrants who don't speak the language went there? How come? Why? Because this is an industry of evil. It's evil beyond anything in history and anything in the future. This industry has to be held accountable. They never stopped growing food in the nuclear wasteland and claimed the entire time that they were checking everything. If they were checking, they wouldn't have never grown the food. The food was banned in these 14 prefectures by 55 countries. Japan said there was nothing going on. Like, when you talk about 60 and older should be prepared to die at your power plant, that's not something you should have on this planet. It's not something that should be on the planet. What part about that is it that the world can't comprehend? What part about it is the nuclear industry can't comprehend? Why are you such cowards? Come on, call in, cowards. Call me, you friggin' cowards. Call me. Call me and explain to me how I'm wrong. I'm sorry. I don't mean to yell because I know it's not going to be very clear. Give me a call. Stop hiding away like cowards. You cowards. You despicable cowards. Pick up the phone and call. I don't hear my phone ringing. How come? The brave and stoic nuclear industry hiding away like generic cowards. You will be held accountable. I am guaranteeing you that. I will guarantee it. We can't save the planet, but I can guarantee you we can hold you accountable at some point. And we're laying the foundation for that right now. You're idiots. You destroyed everything, including your own friends and families, so you can pretend that you're special. You can pretend to people who didn't know any better and to yourself when you look in the mirror that you had a single redeeming quality that you don't. Every one of you should have been thrown off a skyscraper when Fukushima melted down for what you done there. The death penalty in Japan should be throwing you off a skyscraper with a camera strapped to your body, pointed at your face, so we can all enjoy your last moments of a coward. I'll personally throw you off the skyscrapers. I'll take the job. If nobody wants that job, I'll be happy to take it. I wouldn't hesitate for a second. How could I feel guilty about killing people like you? How could I have a morsel of guilt for getting something like you off our planet and your gene pool? How could I? And your gene pool should be tossed too. Clearly, you're a bad, evil gene pool. You should have quit your job. You shouldn't come out and done what you've done. You've done it because you're a monster and a coward. Because you don't have a single redeeming quality, period. Nothing.
Let me just supplement additional aspects related to announcement by Food Safety Commission. And they have issued an announcement already that in order to preserve safety of food, they based on the...
To preserve the safety of the food, when you covered half or a quarter of the planet by this date, how are you going to preserve the food in your own country? I apologize for screaming and yelling, freaking out that we're being exterminated because nobody else will do it.
The guidelines of Nuclear Safety Commission, they...
Look, what Nuclear Safety Commission? What are you talking about? There's a fake nuclear safety commission, but you're not a safety commission. There's not a single thing in the nuclear industry that fulfills their role. Their job is, right, to put control opposition in every check and balance facet of the industry to make sure the industry is never held accountable. By proxy, the releases are perpetual from all the fuel pools worldwide, and they're all surrounded by farms. How can that not move you? How can it not affect you? How can it not horrify and terrify and mortify you? If you understood the truth, you will.
And based on the food sanitary law.
The food sanitary law. How are you going to control emission from a fuel pool when there's no containment and the fuel is splitting atoms directly into the environment? And almost every single nuclear plant is surrounded by farms as far as you can see. Why is this continuing? Why are we not trying to destroy this industry with every fiber in our body? Why are we not running in the streets trying to burn these people out of there? Any generations that survives will hate our guts because we didn't go to war. They're going to war against you. They're destroying everything you love. Everything you're trying to create is being destroyed by this industry. Everything you covet is being destroyed by this industry, has already been destroyed. Just chew the radioactive fallout from 1,000 fuel pools worldwide. And then, of course, the industry will say, look at Dana, he's crazy. He lost it. He's yelling. He's upset. He losing his mind. He's acting like a crazy man. Yeah, because you're exterminating everybody. You're exterminating every species. Have you seen the whales, morons? Have you seen the statistics that are undeniable? Right, like in 2016, when they said 7,000 whales starved to death, do you really think that was going to change in 2017 or 18 or 19 or 20 or 21 or 22 or 23 or 24 or 25 or now 26? Have you seen the 2025 pictures? Look at the emaciated animals. We've never seen nothing like it. I've never seen anything like it. And then every time you hear the word International Atomic Energy Agency, you got to appreciate that they're not a regulatory agency. Every one of them should be thrown off a skyscraper. Not a single one of them have good intentions. They actually have evil intentions.
いいです。すいません。Let me just supplement additional aspects related to announcement by Food Safety Commission.
Civil Group finds high levels of radiation up to 20 millisieverts per year at the Japanese school after restrictions are lifted. The Nuclear Regulatory Commission, the nuclear industry, is trying to remove the linear no threshold and raise the limits to 10 roentgens, 10 rims. It's equivalent to 5,000 X-rays for each human a year. So a child, by the time they hit 18 years of age, would have, say, 90,000 X-rays. Right? They're so evil, they have no one that can hold them accountable. They have no incentive not to be evil. They've never been held accountable for anything. That they just don't care. Right? They don't try to hide their contempt for the species and for humanity and for everybody else. And they're in a position to destroy everybody's health. How can we reconcile not fighting with every fiber in our bodies? How do we look past that and pretend this is not happening? How does that work? They'll chop up that clip of me yelling and saying, Data's a madman. They'll exclude the information that tells the story and make me look like a crazy guy, right? They've done that many times before over the years. They took down my other YouTube channel when I was out looking for spiders with over 1,500 presentations like this on it. And, all my research expeditions, documentation. 25,000 subscribers. Right? I never gained a single subscriber for like 5 years or lost one. Because they have all the power. They have all the money, the monetary, they have all the authority, and they know what they're doing is evil. They're okay with that. They got no issues with that. They love it. They love every facet of it. They spy on you 24 hours a day. Because they have money. They make money doing it, and they're happy. They're okay with that. As long as the truth don't come out, they're okay. Their families will never know that they're just idiot, moron, cowards, and monsters, and serial killers. And then a show that I've been doing forever gets 13 viewers, 15 likes, multiple thumbs down on a poll that clearly is honest. When you take a 1-hour video and it takes you 6 hours to explain the lies, and you have access to the information that I do, and it still takes you 6 hours, like the average person would take 40, 50 hours to flush out all the lies. I happen to be blessed with, knowledgeable and a incredible archive. Paper suits can't protect you in a nuclear wasteland. The Education Board lifted a restriction that students play in the schoolyards for less than 3 hours per day in the wake of the nuclear disaster the year before. So they said, yes, there's a big dose there, but the kids will be okay for 3 hours a day. That's what I call a nuclear wasteland. And those people that created those types of attributes should be getting the death penalty. The education board that lifted the restrictions should vehemently get the death penalty for doing that. For allowing the children to go back into the nuclear wasteland, how is that not the most evil humans conceivable? How is the nuclear industry, the players in the nuclear industry, the International Atomic Energy Agency, IRPA, ONSCLEAR, the IPRC, United Nations, how, in the name of good heavens, are they not the most evilest people in the history of humanity? How does that work? How the hell does that work? How does that work? How can somebody who shows you the documentation and has the best intention for everybody in every species only get 12 people on their shows? How does that work? They're sitting there with their fingers on the buttons at YouTube censoring you. Because evil is natural for them. That's who they are. They're comfortable with that. They're incapable of being a human. They're capable of being monsters. They have to come here and hide you because they don't want their friends and families and neighbors to know who they really are. They can't exist in the real world without being evil. They got the job because that's who they were psychologically. That was recognized and they were given these jobs. Because they were cowards their whole life. And if you talk to the people that they grew up with, they'll say, oh yeah, he's a coward his whole life. She's a coward her whole life. They're the worst humans ever. They never had no friends. These were weirdos. That's who the industry seeks out and hires. The shit for brains of shit for brains. Every one of their friends will say they were the shit for brains of shit for brains in university and school and everywhere else. They were the morons of the morons, and everybody knew it. And everybody knew they would eventually grow up to be serious monsters. Nobody doubted that in their circle. Their friends, their cousins, their aunts, their uncles, including their parents, unless they were in the nuclear industry, would have acknowledged that the people in the nuclear industry are the worst humans you can imagine. The most easily to manipulate, the most easy to coerce into being evil and doing evil things. This is why they get the job. The material we're talking about is 2 billion times more toxic than industrial poison. 2 billion times more toxic than industrial poison. 2 billion times, let me say it a fucking 100 times, 2 billion times more toxic than industrial poison. It's not supposed to exist. Let's keep her going. We'll never get through the show if I keep screaming like a banshee madman. I should do this every show, but I don't because I'm stupid. I should be screaming every show like I used to do. Desperation for the world to come to its senses. I'd kick the shit out of him if I've ever seen him, and her. She's not a female. She's a monster, a monstrous serial killer. I'd crack his fucking head open right there if I ever got the chance.
Okay, can
I wouldn't even hesitate. Yeah, I go to jail for
Christie,
life.
freelance journalist.
But I wouldn't be able to
in view of the fact that many of the foreign embassies have removed their staffs to consulates in the Kansai area, and the U.S. State Department has issued a warning for U.S. citizens to evacuate further.
And every one of these reporters, pieces of shit, are the industry's little toy. And they're given a question to ask, and he looks up the number. Right, he's got his finger on the number of the next answer, and then he'll read whatever's on the paper. He's not a nuclear expert. I played that for you at the beginning of the show. He got the job because he's not capable of making a Freudian slip. How can you not be angry? How can you not be angry? How can you not be heartbroken? How can you not be disgusted? How can you not be humiliated that people like that actually exist? How does that actually work in the real world? How can you not look at these emaciated whales this year, and every species is showing up in the most hideous emaciations? That blue whale up there is missing 350,000 pounds. That bronze whale up there is missing 85,000 pounds. It should weigh around 88,000. It maybe actually only weighs 1,800 pounds. How can that not concern the people of the nuclear industry, the people in your governments, the nuclear regulatory commissions? How can that concern the universities, the academic world? You really think playing this game and orchestrating this destruction of humanity and the species is some big picture that's going to benefit you and your friends, your families, and your loved ones? I'd said a long time ago that if I never went, I wish I never went public, because I would have been an assassin and I would have been good. And a lot of these bootlickers for the industry would have disappeared and nobody would have ever found them or known what fucking happened to them. Morons. Like the evil, look what she's smiling about, the piece of shit. Evil. Okay. All of these people got that job because they're monsters. Because they're disgusting, hideous, pathetic, revolting.
Is that okay? Can I? Christie, freelance journalist. In view of the fact that many of the foreign embassies have removed their staffs to conflicts in the conflict area, and
we got 5 minutes of chopping up whatever the fuck this
and
is.
The U.S. State Department has issued a warning for U.S. citizens to evacuate further than the Japanese government 20 kilometers. Is there any plans?
Why is there so much background noise?
By the Prime Minister's office to...
Because clearly they got a noise gate on that microphone, right?
Have NHK.
So when he looks away a little bit, he's looking down or something like this. If you're not speaking directly to it, it cuts in and out. He knows better. He's doing this on purpose.
Give more detailed information about fallout areas and especially the Tokyo area.
Nobody says, hey, put your mouth close to the microphone.
With a high population concentration, are there any plans along?
I like to waterboard every fucking one of them. I have no issues with it whatsoever.
On that line? Thank you.
フリーランスのジャーナリストですけれども、外国の大使館の多くが領事業務職員など関西地域に
So like I cut this out of all this translation, but it still took us almost 6 hours to go through, except for my very unusual for me to rent.
移動させていることに鑑み、並びに、アメリカの国務省が自国民に対して日本政府が示している避難地域よりも広い避難地域に避難するよう警告を出していることに鑑み、内閣府かな首相府としては NHK で、そのフォールアウトに関するもっと詳細な情報を流す予定はあるのでしょうか。特に東京のように人口密度が高い地域に関する、フォールアウトに関して、NHK などテレビでもっとより詳細な情報を流す予定は終わりでしょうか。
Well, we know that different governments have issued their own
So he speaks in English. She's going to translate it now to Japanese.
guidelines or
only 3.5
travel
minutes of the video to get
alerts
through.
in terms of their citizens living in Japan.
Citizens. Like this, that's talking down to people. See, when you do that routine, they're disconnected. They don't even know what a human experience is all about.
Or visiting our country. And at the end of the day, this is the measures that would be taken in terms of protecting the individual government's citizens. And this is the decision that we would not be interfering into. And we generally think that given the fact that the respective governments are following the situation in Japan from abroad,
and they all knew what was happening, and they all helped cover it up.
Those governments tend to take more conservative decisions. Having said that, we are trying to make to be transparent in terms.
They're not trying to be transparent. They're doing everything but be transparent. Their job is to murder 8 million species so they can protect their jobs and protect their income, and their family doesn't know they're monsters their whole fucking life. What a poor and terrifying and pathetic fucking excuse that is.
In terms of radioactivity level, and this is something that Mr. Kato would be able to explain. But before getting into that,
he's not a nuclear expert. He doesn't know what he's doing. Before that, he was in industry.
We think that, for example, all of us staying here in Tokyo, probably, decided to stay in Tokyo. And I personally don't feel that there is significant risks associated with radiation living in Tokyo or country.
And clearly that was not true. They can't get rid of the ashes from the incinerators. They can't get rid of the sewage. They can't get rid of the sediment from the water reclamation facilities. Everything, the air, the land, the water, the shops, the buildings, the morning dew at 4,000 counts per minute, the pollen at 2,000 pollens per cubic meter of air. 36 million people. Rather than do what you should do, which is evacuate your country, and how are you going to do that? Instead of, geothermal, we say, well, we can't do geothermal because we're too stupid to drill. Yeah, we can get 1 million corporations to work together to build the equipment necessary to have a nuclear reactor, but we can't get 2 to build a drill deep and drill the extra 2 kilometers down to tap into geothermal because we're Japanese. We're stupid. We're idiot people. We're an idiot society. We're a useless, pathetic society. Fucker.
今日何度か申し上げましたけども、日本全国の各都道府県について、空間のガンマ線の線量、それから水道水、フォローアウトについて毎日、分析をして、その結果をマスメディアにお流しするとともに文部科学省のホームページにアップします。
Listen to what he said. Now she's going to translate it.
As I have already mentioned a number of times during this meeting today, in all of the prefectures in Japan, we will be analyzing every day the gamma ray dose level in the atmosphere.
What about alphas? What about neutrons? What about betas? What about X-rays? Really? You're gonna monitor gamma? That's it? Why is he allowed to live? Why is he allowed to breathe the same air?
I as well as the tap
Fucking
water
pieces
and
of shit,
fallout.
this industry.
And the results will be made available to the mass media and will also be carried in the website of the Ministry of Education, Culture, Sports, and Science.
The Ministry of Education, Cultural, Sports, and Science. Where's the fucking nuclear experts? Not a single one on the panel. Not a single one. Not a single fucking one. Tell me that they shouldn't get the death penalty and explain that to me. Tell me that this is reasonable because give me a logical excuse not to be fucking absurdly upset about this. How can this not affect you?
I have one correction regarding the gentleman's
Oh, he speaks perfect English.
question, which is Article 15 report
Article 15.
regarding Unit 3 of Fukushima Daiichi plant. Actually, as you can see from this chart.
Really? You can see from that fucking chart? This is a 15-year-old video, shit video on top of that. Very low quality. You didn't have projectors back then? You didn't have big screens back then? That's the first time we've ever seen him even
there were
suggest
two,
there was...
Article 15.
And this the control opposition disguised as journalists is who he's talking to. Not talking to me. This is
reports regarding Unit 3 on March 13th and 14th.
The most
that's my
thing
correction.
imaginable. Well, it's over. Let me play that part one more time, because I was screaming as usual.
I have one correction regarding the gentleman's...
He has a question. He doesn't even know what the fuck nuclear is until a couple of days before that.
Question, which is Article 15 report regarding Unit 3 of Fukushima Daiichi plant. Actually, as you can see from this chart, there were two Article 15 reports regarding Unit 3 on March 13th and 14th. So that's my correction.
Well, the 14th it detonated and injected the reactor cores and the fuel pools. And I still don't understand what that meant. I still have no concept of what that actually meant. Like, you know, when you think about all the media that came out and claimed they were on top of the building, when you think of all the universities that regurgitated the same lies, produced the same pictures, the same assertions, they conspired and continue to conspire. Now they have to conspire forever. They can never tell you the truth. They can't say, oh, our bad, we lied to you. And what? I get 16 on the poll. I get 16 likes on my hard-won video. I get 13 viewers because evil is allowed to do whatever it wants. No one is allowed to have a future. No species is allowed to have a future. Only the nuclear industry. Only the nuclear industry is allowed to make decisions. No one is allowed to resist. Everybody must get sick and fucking die because an industry is in a position to enable that. And I don't even, like, if I had any foundations that would support me, we would destroy this fucking industry in less than a year. Because the truth has that power. The truth has that ability. The truth has that necessity. That is a necessity. Greenpeace has millions of people donating to it every year, and they're pro-nuclear disguised as anti-nuclear. The anti-nuclear, like the Bulletin of Atomic Scientists, for instance. And it's about weapons. They won't talk about nuclear fuel pools that are splitting atoms into your communities and into your farmlands all day, every day, at a pace that is unsustainable, that is unacceptable, that is ultimately going to lead into a permanent extinction of everybody way quicker than anything else could possibly do it. Radioactive fallout is the Achilles heel to 8 million species. There's no species on the planet that has an autoimmune trigger that can defend against these microscopic particulates and elements and isotopes. No species has an autoimmune trigger that can defeat it. And you can't see it, and you can't hear it, and you can't feel it, and you can't taste it, and you can't smell it, and you can't find it. Hello, everybody. Yeah, I get a little cranky sometimes. I know that. If a 1-hour Fukushima press conference averages 6 hours of counter documentation, excluding the rare rants, I kind of went overboard tonight because I'm fucking sick of it. Is nuclear power unsupportable? Yes, nuclear power is unsupportable. It's a crime against humanity to have nuclear power. Nuclear power is the devil. It destroys everything. It attacks on purpose everything. Anything with replicating cells is annihilated. Like the basis of the food chain, the basis of the oxygen chain, the basis of the carbon sequestration chain, the biota, the very foundation of all life is immediately wiped out, and the cascade effects now are blatant. And it was blatant in 2016. When 7,000 whales die of starvation, do you really fucking think the rest of the whales didn't die of starvation too? Because almost all of them eat the same fucking stuff. When are you going to get your fucking acts together out there and go to war? When are you going to enable me, if not, to go to fucking war? I will go to war. I am at war. They're gone to fucking war with you and your species. Do you really think the food chain wasn't fucking broken when 7,000 whales were acknowledged? And we're not talking about humpbacks. You really think that's the only fucking species that has shown up emaciated and starved to death? I appreciate everybody letting me rant, all 13 of you. I think my light, I'm going to have to take that down and see what's going on. Give it a couple of bangs, maybe I can fix it, because I'm going to have to replace that light. That one's starting to fail on me. And so it should. We've had that a long time. It's got 600 LEDs on it. We spent a lot of fucking money on it. I think we spent $70,000 on the studio ultimately, in order to be able to stay here and continue to go to fucking war through an education. But I'm sick of the education. I want to hold these fuckers accountable. I think you should all have to die by, their heads should have to go into voices, and that the victims' families each of them comes in and makes a crank on the fucking voice until their head goes pop. And the people that are censoring me, I think they should be tied, their legs should be tied, and then you should have fucking horses split them right in fucking two. Because they done more damage, as much damage as the nuclear industry by suppressing this information. You're evil fucks, as you people are. You're the most cowardly things I've ever even conceived. I've never heard of nothing as cowardly as a pro-nuclear shit for brains. You're morons. You're incredibly fucking stupid, too. You allowed the planet to be exterminated so you can pretend that you're special. look up the definition. I go ask a psychiatrist what is the definition of somebody like that with that attribute, and then look in your fucking mirror, because that's who you are. I'll never regret anything, because I took the high ground and tried to do the moral and ethical thing, while everybody else in the academic world failed us. This little group of people refused to give up. That's what history will remember. And the entire planet in the future will agree with us. And every university seen that, they knew the reactor cores, around 9 reactor cores were released. And then they're still out there today saying Chernobyl is the world's worst accident. And every one of those people should get punched out every fucking time they walk outdoors or go to a supermarket. Stupid fucking nuclear industry. Morons. The stupid morons from the nuclear industry. Anyway, have a great night. Have a great night and a great day tomorrow. I'll be back tomorrow night. And the night after, hopefully. Because we have to go to war. We have no choice. Somebody has to fucking do it. I'm happy to do it. I'm proud to do it. I'm thrilled to fucking come out here every day that I can. And how do I sleep if I don't? How do I look in a fucking mirror if I don't come out and try to make the world a bit better because of what this fucking industry's got done? How does that actually work? I worked on one story today, for, it was almost 5 hours total. One fucking story. That's how freaking stupid this industry actually is. We're going to play Nuclear Overton Window. I'll put a link in the description. It's going to disappear for 12, 14 hours. And just bear with me here. I'll put the link in before I play the song. That's a fantastic song. That's the wrong one. Hang on. It's just a fantastic song. James had put out Polish Symphony last night also, which is pretty impressive, man. The boy got skills beyond imagination, I'll tell you that right now. All right, so I'm going to play, I just put a link in the description for you, Overton Window. Nuclear Overton Window. There's a link in the description, but you can find it on James Lewis's site on YouTube. He put a link to the story. We'll see everybody on the next madness, the next fucked up show that we do, which is tomorrow night. And you have a great night. Hugs for everybody. Have a great day tomorrow. Fuck the nuclear industry. Fuck everybody in the nuclear industry, you morons. You fucking dummies. And the nuclear industry, the last 4 or 5 generations of people in the nuclear industry, hasn't created anything fucking new. They're working on the old technology. They don't have a single redeeming quality among every fucking one of them. You stupid shit for fucking brains. Have a great night. See everybody on the next one. Take care.
Those who decide told us there was no alternative. They said the demand was fixed. They said reliability needs scale, and scale won't wait. They said firm power, constant power. Said the future needs it now. They called it a renaissance. Said the decision was already made. They said delay was danger. They said review was over. This is how the nuclear Overton window began to narrow. Those who decide talked about solutions, talked about schedules, but not about keeping what remains when the generation ends. They talked about storage for now, they talked about fixes ahead. They said the process was technical, not ours. They didn't talk about the horizon, they didn't name who stays accountable. The nuclear Overton window never held a long term. Asking slowed things down, then caution cost too much. Consent became friction, so it was pushed aside. The nuclear Overton window moved again, from open debate to settled position. Rules were shortened, reviews rushed. Governance turned into something to move through. The window didn't shatter, the push continues. Here stands the nuclear Overton window, not cracked, not broken, held open on purpose. Not a future to keep reopening, not a decision to keep revisiting. This must be decided, this must be carried, this must not be passed forward without an end in sight. Remember this moment. The nuclear Overton window must close. Not paused, not deferred, entered into practice with consent. This should not remain unresolved. This is what we must remember. This is what we must remember.